Hey there, and welcome. You ever feel like the world is just getting more complicated every single day? It can be a little overwhelming, right? So, how do we find a way forward? Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating framework that's designed to help us do exactly that, to turn all that complexity from a threat into a massive opportunity. So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle the big challenge we're all facing, this explosion of complexity. Then we'll introduce a totally new way of seeing the world, one that shifts our focus from what we think we can do to what's actually possible. After that, we'll get into how we can guide our actions with flexible anchors instead of brittle, rigid rules. And finally, we'll see how this whole mindset can actually transform stress into a real source of strength. Okay, let's dive right into the heart of the problem. Our modern world is built on this huge paradox. On one hand, we have all this incredible technology and connectivity that's opened up a world of unbelievable possibilities. The potential feels, well, it feels limitless. But, and this is the big but, that exact same explosion of information and connection has created this kind of fog of complexity. It can feel completely paralyzing. It makes trying to navigate the future feel almost impossible sometimes. So that brings us to the billion-dollar question, doesn't it? How do we tap into all this amazing potential without getting totally swamped by the chaos? Well, the framework we're exploring today offers up a solution, a brand new mental model for how we engage with the world around us. And that new framework is called active bloomology. Now, this is less about a rigid set of instructions and, more about a fundamental shift in how we actually see the world. I think this quote just hits the nail on the head. It gets right to the core of it. This whole idea isn't about sitting back and waiting for someone to hand us the solutions. It's about moving from being a passive passenger to an active participatory steward, actively caring for and shaping the very systems that we're all a part of. This image here really illustrates this central idea, which is learning to see value flows. Think of it this way. Instead of seeing the world as just a collection of separate, disconnected things, we start to see it as a living, breathing network where value, energy, and potential are constantly flowing between everything and everyone. And it all starts at the foundation. If you remember that diagram we just saw down in the bottom left corner, everything begins with the individual. It's about our own perceptions, our own actions, and the value we create right here in our immediate world. But of course, it doesn't just stop there. That individual value flows outward. It scales up through our organizations, into our communities, and eventually shapes our shared culture. Each layer builds on the last, connecting everything to what the framework calls the web of life. It's this really powerful vision of nested, interconnected systems where one small action can literally send ripples through the entire structure. Okay, so this is where it gets really, really interesting. How do we perceive these flows, and what's our role in them? It actually requires a whole new lens. And that lens is all about this concept of affordances. Okay, think about learning to ride a bike. The bike and the ground itself afford the possibility of riding, right? But you have to first see that possibility and then act on it. You learn by doing, through trial and error, through that interaction. The skill isn't just in you, it's in the relationship between you and your environment. So let's just break that down. An affordance isn't some internal skill you have. It's an external opportunity that the world offers you. But, and this is the key, that opportunity is totally useless unless we can first perceive it and then actually do something about it. This quote absolutely nails it. See, the real bottleneck isn't that we lack imagination, it's that we haven't trained our perception to see the countless opportunities for action that are already all around us. The potential is right there. We just have to learn how to see it. Okay, so if we can train ourselves to see all these new opportunities, how in the world do we act on them together, as a team or a community, without everything just falling into chaos or, on the flip side, getting stuck in rigid bureaucracy? Let's get into the next big idea. The answer here is something called configurable anchors. Just look at the visual here. It's a set of scales, not a rule book. That's the key. These anchors are all about intuitive weighting, about balancing our perceptions and our relationships to help guide our judgment, not to dictate our actions. Here's the perfect way to think about this. Rigid rules are like a concrete dam. They're brittle, they're restrictive, and they're designed to stop the flow of judgment completely. But configurable anchors, they're like the banks of a river.
They don't stop the water, they guide it. They provide these flexible, adaptable boundaries that actually enable better judgment by directing the flow of action. It's a huge difference.
So let's bring all this together now. Let's look at the payoff. Why is this whole approach, seeing affordances, using flexible anchors, why is it so powerful? Why does it matter?
Well, it's all about building resilience. The goal is to find what the source material calls the golden mean, that sweet spot, that perfect balance that allows a group or a whole system to bend under pressure without breaking. But it's more than that. It actually allows the system to keep learning from that very pressure. And at the end of the day, this isn't just some philosophical exercise. No way. It delivers real, practical benefits. When you can sense misalignments early, you can prevent things from collapsing. When you can spot hidden constraints, you can come up with truly new solutions. You're not just surviving stress anymore. You're actively converting it into learning, and in the process, you're amplifying the value of the entire system.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We spend so much of our time and energy searching for the right answers, right? For the perfect plan. But what if the most powerful skill we could possibly develop is simply getting better at seeing the possibilities that are already all around us, just waiting for us to notice? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this idea.